Hey MBA hopefuls, we are live on the air with MBA Waves talking all things business and education. Please don't forget to hit subscribe to our channel, which helps us to continue to create all this free content. Today on episode 147, finishing touches on your round one application, we're bringing the focus on how to prioritize your efforts for round one, tackling the dilemma, round one or later, and how to get it all together in the best possible way. This week, I'm your host, Krithika, joined by my co host, Bara. And also, we have a very special guest and admissions consultant extraordinaire, Linda Abraham, who is the founding president of AGAG as well as the founder of accepted.com. Linda, a very warm welcome to you. And hi,
Thank you.
Bara.
Thank you. Thank you for the very generous introduction, overly generous.
So Linda has been a regular on MBA Waves, and it's always fun to have her. So let's just jump right into the topic. So for many folks, the universal advice that they get is how to get in, that you have to get in early and apply in round one. In your opinion, Linda, having helped so many students, does it pay to apply in round one?
It pays to apply in round one if you're ready to apply in round one. And by ready, I mean you've taken you've studied for the test, gotten your best score, you've done the research necessary, you've worked really hard on the essays, you're not slapping something together that's mediocre and sloppy in order to get it in round one. In other words, my rule has always been, and this is for decades, apply in the earliest round possible, provided you don't compromise the quality of your application. If you're compromising on that quality, wait till the next round, wait till the next year, wait till you can really submit a great application.
And it goes without saying that when you are applying, how do you know if you're ready? Well, having someone to look at your essays and having someone to bounce ideas off of, working with an admissions consultant is going to also help you. You might think that you're the cat's meow, but you really need to have some feedback, right?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree with that one. I've been doing it for 30 years.
Right. So how would you say that applicants should prioritize their efforts in the last few weeks before their submission? What are some of the things that you wind up telling your clients?
Okay, in the last few weeks, well, I mean, clients approach the process in so many different ways,
Sure.
right? In terms of, can I focus on what they should be reviewing? Let's assume that their essays are written. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
The essays are written, the test is taken, they are ready to hit submit. My ideal would be that, let's say, a week, 5 days before the applications actually due, they go through and they look at their application, they look at it on a macro level. Does it fit together? And by fitting together, I don't mean does the information complement each other. I mean, does every piece present something a little bit more, add value to the application, tell the reader something additional from what the other piece says? And that's talking about the resume, the work and activity history descriptions, the essays, a video if it's required. It should all be additive and complementary and minimize duplication. Say hi, Eric.
Hello.
Hi, Eric.
Nice to see you, Linda.
Good to see you. So that's kind of the first level. Then put it away for a day. This is my ideal. I know it doesn't always happen that way. And next day, take it out and look at the essays, look at the resume, but look at them individually. You're not looking for complementariness now. You're looking at, does each piece of writing stand on its own? Is your resume highlighting your results and your impact as opposed to your responsibilities? Is each essay coherent? Does it answer the question posed? Does it have a clear theme, a logical structure, an introduction that's engaging, a conclusion that actually concludes the essay? All these things, these are a macro level. Notice I haven't mentioned grammar or spelling or any of those things, but they all need to be checked. Put it away. And then the third day, take it out again. And this time, look at it on a macro level. And when I'm talking about macro level, this is, again, my ideal. Double or triple space it. The essays now I'm talking about more. Yeah, go through the boxes, make sure that everything is capitalized correctly, spelled correctly, all that stuff so that you don't look sloppy. But now for the essays, take the essays, each essay, print it out, double or triple spaced, go away from your desk, don't look at the screen, take the paper and read it out loud, paying attention to the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling. And when you see an error, circle it or correct it. And then and when you finish your reading, go back to the screen and make the corrections. And then put it away maybe for an hour this time, because we are getting close to the deadline, right? Put it away for an hour or two. Again, print it out double or triple spaced and read it aloud again, paying attention to all those things that I just mentioned, because your ear will catch things that your eye is going to miss, both in terms of punctuation and spelling and all that stuff, especially if you have words that sound the same but mean something different. You know, wow, what is that? Is that here or here, there or there? You know, all those words. So, do that or hire somebody to do it for you. But if you're doing it on your own, that's really how you check and review an application really thoroughly, and then submit it. Not the last day, not at, if the deadline is 11:59, do not submit it at 11 p.m. Submit it the day before or 2 days before, and you'll be doing it knowing that you've checked it really thoroughly and you're submitting your best work.
Linda, I love the way that you gave away the secret to good writing, actually. Good writing is what you can actually read out loud. And I always say, while people are ideating, to write on pen and paper, because it has something, it doesn't have a backspace. And you don't cut out so often. So it gives them like easy ways to ideate. And one thing I'm taking away from this is you're assuming that people are done and dusted with all the components of the application, and it's literally just the finishing touches. So if somebody is thinking of writing their essays or test in the last couple of weeks, maybe it's too late for them.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Maybe if you've already have some really polished applications, you can, and the last minute application that you want to submit does not have a lot of essay questions. All you have to do is adapt. You could perhaps do that in the last couple of weeks. But if you're starting your first application, don't try and do it in a week or two. You're working full time. You want to give it, again, you want to submit your best. If you're applying to top programs, you certainly do. You can't submit something mediocre and expect to get in.
Exactly. This is why I love to have you on MBA Waves, Linda. It's good to see you again. Like I said, I like your process. Very methodical. It's very digestible, and I think people can relate to that. So that's cool. Also, I would say that it goes beyond the essays. I mean, you could apply this process of like reading out loud, printing it, and so forth to your CV, to other components of your application, the short answer stuff, and the everything really.
Absolutely.
Especially angry letters.
Yeah. Print it on sheet paper. Make sure you recycle so we don't feel like but yeah, it's a good way to do it. You really want to be sure this is something you don't want to miss the mark on. I think it's also a little bit counterintuitive in alignment with what you were saying about essentially not repeating. You want to make sure each piece adds something new, adds something different. And I think it's counterintuitive because people have this fear like, oh, I don't want them to miss this. So I want to make sure they say it again here and here. It's like, listen, guys, MBA hopefuls, they don't miss anything. These people are professionals. They know how to read applications, essays. They glean everything and anything. So don't be afraid that you're going to miss something and make the mistake of repeating yourself in a second essay or in another aspect of your application. It's a waste of real estate, as we say in the industry, space that you can be using for other things, and it could lead to a ding, let's say. So I'm going to move on to a question I have. If that's all right. What would you say is often neglected in the application that you wish MBA hopefuls paid more attention to, Linda?
The boxes. The boxes. Those are also telling part of your story. Those really short answers, the boxes, the work and activity history. I know Esmeralda Cardinal, one of the leading consultants that accepted and a former admissions director at Yale, she tells her clients to start with the boxes. To make sure that they're giving them the proper attention. But if you just fill out those boxes again, all right, it's maybe not 11 p.m., maybe 10 p.m. when the application is due at 11:59 p.m., you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to have that kind of global overview that I was talking about a minute ago. you can put some really good information in there, provided you do it thoughtfully. How many people were on your team? How much did you increase sales in your role at whatever position you had? Maybe you can talk about an interpersonal challenge that you don't have room for in your resume or didn't fit into an essay. All those things are really important in an application where you're going to be trying to show not just technical skills, but leadership skills. Mm-hmm. So start with the boxes. I think those are the most, those are, in my view, the most underrated part of the application. And if I may add something about starting the whole process, if you want to start the whole process in kind of a systematic way, go application by application, number one. And number two, either make a list or do a spreadsheet, whatever floats your boat, PowerPoint, I really don't care. But plan out, you have so much space in the work and activity histories. You have maybe a little personal background essay. You have additional information. You have the main essays. You have perhaps a post-MBA goal question. Each of those is an opportunity for you as an applicant to present some information that's not in any place else in the application. So make your list of all these opportunities and then plan out how you're going to use them in the second column. You don't have to go, you don't have to write an essay, just what topics are you going to cover? And that way you kind of are starting out the process in a very strategic, thoughtful, and intentional way.
Lita, I love how you kind of showed the importance of thinking of the whole application and all the different components. I always tell my clients that it's like a kaleidoscope. Each one of it can give you a different facet of yourself. And so utilize it that way instead of thinking that I have to say the same thing again. Maybe they missed it the first time on the resume, so I'm going to tell the same thing again here and so on. So
I like, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I like the metaphor of a jigsaw puzzle where every piece fits together, nothing duplicates, it just jives, and you end up with a picture.
That's a beautiful analogy too. Continuing on that, how do you think people can be consistent across the different pieces here, the essays, the recommendations, the CV, and of course the application data form that takes in so many things?
Well, obviously, no, we're not talking about lying here or making things up, right? That's number one. Okay. Number two, I don't worry quite as much about consistency as some other people say or recommend. I like to show multidimensionality because we are all multidimensional. And that's what the schools, I think, are really looking for when they talk about diversity. Are you going to be a consultant? Are you going to be a healthcare consultant who plays the tuba and is really, really good at poker?
That's a good comment.
All right. I mean, is there consistency there? I don't know, but it's a lot of interest. So, a multidimensional person is more interesting than a unidimensional person. Sure. So I tend not to worry. Again, we're not talking about making things up. That would be more than inconsistency. It's something that definitely doesn't go. But if there's different interests, different strands in one's life, I think that makes for interest and it makes for a more compelling application. I don't know, Eric, Bara, Krithika, what do you think of that? Krithika? Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. What I meant was consistency in facts. So for example, someone says that I have 50 something and then they write 50,000 elsewhere, as well as
that would be making mistakes and sloppiness in my view. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. If you're being factual about your life, then you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Obviously, and if you check your application thoroughly, as we started out talking about, you don't have to worry about that.
Right. Yeah, and I like the bringing out the multidimensionality, right? Because how else are you going to stand out when there are so many people with the same GMAT scores and coming from your same industry? And of course, if you're in the overrepresented pools, it's just going to be all the more difficult.
Right. And then
go ahead, Linda. Sorry, I'll go after you.
there, by the way, is also the importance of specifics. Are you a consultant or are you a healthcare consultant? Are you an accountant or a forensic accountant? You know, the minute you start to be more specific, you are automatically going to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Being specific definitely helps. The term comes to me called intersectionality, which is generally, it's a term in the States often for people who fall into multiple categories, like I am African-American, but also say lesbian or Jewish or whatever. And, you know, when people think about diversity in the States, it often is about like race or religion, genders in there. And then internationally, so outside of the US, people often think of national origin first when they talk about diversity. And it is so much more than that in terms of what business schools are looking for. And I think the proof of that, I mean, is they put their money where their mouth is. That's the second biggest category of scholarships, like what I call internal scholarships, besides merit-based, is the diversity stuff. And there's schools I think are genuinely interested in creating as diverse of a class as possible. And what I do when I start off with a new client is this thing called a storytelling interview. And I have the same set of 25 questions that I ask everyone to tease out these stories of them. Like, what makes you unique? What makes you awesome? And, you know, these are some of the things that I think are often undervalued by applicants that actually are ultimately what sell them the best, that make them stand out, but also fit into the puzzle in terms of applying that metaphor to the class as well. You know, people in the program are not looking to go to school with a bunch of cookie cutter people just like them. They benefit from the diverse knowledge base, problem solving skills, industries, nationalities, the whole gamut. Even like political leanings, I think, are something schools are interested in. You know, universities, I think, around the world, not just in the US, tend to be some consider bastions of liberal thought. And so I've heard some people who are more on the conservative side having or feeling maybe a little bit uncomfortable applying for MBA programs. And they shouldn't, and they should talk about that. People who come from a religious background, like Mormons come to mind. If that is a central part of your identity and also your education, your experience, Mormons often spend a couple of years abroad. They learn a new language. There's leadership skills all over this, you know, and networking. As an example. So I think people should not hesitate to dig deep into themselves. And again, that's where admissions consulting can help. We provide that mirror. But if that's out of budget, like, work with a trusted friend, preferably someone who's done an MBA that can help you think through this process.
For sure.
I've got a question. You know, I often see students with test prep who will keep on going over the things that they know because it feels good. It feels good. You're like, oh, I know this, but they don't necessarily go over the things that they don't need as much help with. How does an applicant stop the polishing and stop continuing going over their essays so much when they're good? Like, how do you help students to say move on to the boxes, move on to the other things? What would you say to applicants about that?
Well, sometimes it can be quite difficult. Usually the deadline helps. You know, and other times we just say, look, we think this is ready to go. We think you're at the point of diminishing returns, to be sure, and it could be affecting the quality of your next application because you're spending so much time on this one. Some clients are more than happy to move on, and some just have a hard time letting go. It can be difficult. It can be difficult.
Well, let the clients decide.
They have to ultimately. They're the ones applying, right?
They are the ones applying. Again, most of the time, most clients, if we go through an essay 3, 4, 5 times, and you know the red is diminishing, then they are more than happy to move on. But you do have occasionally some that just go over it. Well, like I said, the law of diminishing returns definitely sets in.
Linda, I wanted to bring it up to you because we talk about this sometimes in AGAC. For those who don't know, AGAC is the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. We all are or have been affiliated with this fantastic organization. And some of us in this community of admissions consultants and test prep people talk about how, you know, we've worked with an applicant who's applying for XYZ schools, and you've really come up with, you know, a great story. You've agreed on, okay, this is what we should talk about. And you've coached them on this process and they get through everything and you think you're really there and ready to go. And then last minute that applicant, for us as a client, has completely changed everything. And now the deadline's tomorrow. And tell us some stories, Linda. And what
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, there are different kinds of stories. All right. Let's say it's not the day before the deadline. Let's say, and usually it goes something like this. It's, well, we've gone through the essay. We've worked on it several times. It's approaching the finished product. And the client comes back and says, I talked to my second cousin 3 times removed, and or my 100th Facebook friends. Or maybe I posted on Facebook and I got feedback, or I guess now it'd be Instagram, whatever. And this one cousin who got in says that that's not how she approached her essay at all, and I'm approaching it the wrong way.
How?
All right. So you're all smiling. So I guess you've heard this, right? So what I would do then is I would try and patiently look at it. If I thought there was some merit to the changes, I would try and incorporate them. But usually what they've done when they've taken a whole different approach is I'd say something like, okay, look, there are an infinite number of approaches to your application and this essay. Mm-hmm. The reason we chose this approach is A, B, C, D. The reason I think this approach is still better is because of whatever. One of the reasons might be that the current version duplicates, the essay over there, and we don't want to duplicate, but this essay highlights these particular aspects of your background and experience. So I recommend that you stick with the original essay.
Also, this person is not you. Like, maybe they got in, but this person's story is
and I would say, look, remember, I have 30 years of experience. Your second cousin 3 times removed got into one school, or got in one time, or gotten 5 times once. I got this 30 years of experience. Yeah. And I'll be thinking to myself, why didn't you hire that person? It would have been a lot cheaper. But I'll try and control myself. And again, if I think there's merit to some of the changes, let's incorporate them. But usually there's a good reason we took the approach we took. Mm-hmm. And, you don't want to have too many cooks literally spoiling the essay. Mm-hmm. And I'll try and explain the reason I think that we should stick to it. If the client insists on pursuing the course I'm recommending against, then I'll edit it for grammar and stuff like that, because it's their essay at all times.
Sure. And another thing, Linda, is like when that cousin of yours got into Oxford in the 16th century, like, it was a different game, right?
Right.
The program was different, right? The team was different. The very people who are reading and evaluating are different. Policies have changed. And then the ecosystem around it has changed. Technology, laws, society, all of this has changed. Business has changed. And so you can't judge that based on the person who got in X number of years ago. Obviously not the Middle Ages, but even if it's like 5-10 years ago, it's a different game. And again, I'm going to bring up AGAC, is one of the advantages is the conferences that we have every year where we sit down with the admissions directors of like the top 25, 30 schools.
And the summer with the school sessions.
And then the summer with the school sessions.
Yeah.
So we are up to date and know exactly what they're looking for.
In the honor of Olympics, which Eric was able to attend, and we were not, and we were like enjoying vicariously through him, I would say that the Olympics have changed. Like earlier it was a 4-minute mile long ago, right? But now look at the records and what's happening. So many people clocking the under 10 second and so on, right? So the bar, I would say, is just going up. The applicant pool and the competitors are getting stronger. And they also have a long time of prep before them than what probably the previous competitors had. So comparing to a previous applicant may not be definitely to the best advantage of somebody applying.
I would say they might have insights about the alumni community, tying that into your story about why you fit into this this culture. That makes sense. But their story is not yours. And
right. I've talked about this many times, but one of our consultants, former admission, again, this is Esmeralda Cardinal as it happens, but she had one of her first clients came to her and had a rejection review. He wanted to know why he was rejected at a particular MBA program, and he ultimately signed up for additional services. But she said, I would have rejected you too. And he said, well, why would you have rejected me? She said, because your goal has nothing to do with what you've done in the past. He had been in financial analysis, and he wrote that he wanted to be an entrepreneur. There was no connection between what he'd done in the past and what he said he wanted to do. So he said, well, my friends all told me that that entrepreneurship is the cool goal right now. So I should say I want to be an entrepreneur. She says, well, what do you really want to do? He says, I want to do finance. I want to do, and that's what I want to focus on. So she says, well, why don't we write about that? And of course the guy did. And again, he got guidance. He had her editing, and he was accepted at multiple programs. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not saying you can't talk to your friends, and I'm not saying that they won't have something valuable to contribute, but do realize that they're not experts necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to get into the rounds dilemma in terms of like, okay, you've got everything lined up, your essays are done, you filled out the data form, your references are lined up or submitted already. When do you really push on and go for round one, or say, you know what? What are some instances, Linda, that maybe people would like to hear about that? So, maybe it's worth waiting for round two.
You're not ready.
What does that look like?
You're not ready. Okay, I think this is kind of part you missed, Eric, but you want to apply in the earliest round possible, provided you don't compromise the quality of your applications. Okay, that's my rule. So compromise the quality of your application could mean that you don't go over it thoroughly. Maybe you rushed filling out the boxes. Maybe you took your test 2 days before the due date, so you rushed the whole application, the essays, the boxes, everything involved. Your resume is very much a technical resume as opposed to a business resume. Any of these things could be reasons to postpone your application. If you're applying to a top MBA program, the acceptance rates are usually under 25%. That means that 3 out of 4 applicants or more are being rejected. Most of those rejected applicants are on somewhat level qualified and competitive. They would be admissible, but you can't afford a sloppy, slapped together application. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them are facing the dilemma now because they always hear that, oh, round one is good, round one has more seats, round one is like better, but it is at a certain cost, and that is the quality.
There's no round one advantage to submitting something that's mediocre.
Absolutely. And I heard you say, even though I wasn't on this camera, I did hear you say, Linda, okay, never at the expense, compromising the quality of your application. I
wasn't sure what you heard, Eric. I'm sorry.
No. It's good. This bears repeating because it is the most important theme of this episode, I think. Round one is great, or the sooner the better is great, except if you're not submitting the top, the best quality or the best possible version of your application. Again, the EGA community, I think there's a general consensus that there's little to no difference between rounds 1 and 2. When we talk about round 3, I'm talking about American schools, right? Round 3, there are fewer seats. It does become more complicated if you're quote unquote international student. So that is a difference. But round 1 and 2, very little difference. When it comes to scholarships, however,
yeah,
there can be a difference between 1 and 2.
I think there is an advantage to round 1. I think if somebody can submit their best work round 1, I think there is an advantage to doing it. The class is empty. Nobody knows who else is going to apply round 2. Nobody knows how many people are going to apply round 2. So I think there is an advantage. And as you pointed out, there's an advantage in terms of scholarship, Eric. There's also an advantage in knowing. I mean, you'll get an answer before New Year's if you apply round 1 to most schools.
Kick back and relax.
Yeah, kick back and relax. Plan a vacation before you move. All that. And if you're abroad, then you have plenty of time to get your visa lined up. All those things. So I think there is an advantage, but not at the cost of mediocrity or sloppiness.
100%. And there's something I should mention that it can vary from school to school. Why do I say this? A school like Columbia is definitely a school you probably want to do your best to apply for round 1, especially what we saw last year. Round 1 was hard as normal. Round 2, there was an enormous number of rejections and waitlisted applicants. And so I think the best advice is to, if you can, try to get CBS in for round one. And this can change year on year. So this is
exactly. That's what I was thinking. But I mean, I also, I mean, last year was the first year that CBS had rounds, right?
Right.
So it might have been adjusting to a change in its system too.
That's what
I think,
or want
you know,
to
yeah.
But based on the most recent situation, I'm encouraging my clients to go for round one if they can do it effectively.
Yeah, and just to emphasize on what is ready, they should definitely have a competitive score, whatever the
Yeah.
school has a little bit above, and the basic things like matching whatever the school needs. And Linda, one of the things that you mentioned was being very clear about the career goals, because I have seen that it's only during the essays that the career goals undergo the maximum change for a few people, because that's when they start thinking and finding a certain other profession to be glamorous, or certain other goal to be much more
The cool
attainable.
one this year. The cool goal. I'm saying.
I want to pop in and also say that everything that you're saying about who you go, you said this a while ago about going on Facebook and putting up your essays and what people have to say about that. The same holds true for test prep. I think word of mouth is really, a lot of us get our business that way because we have really great results. But word of mouth should not include the guy in the stall, like in the cubicle next to you, who did really well in the GMAT, that he's got the answers of how you're going to do well on the GMAT. Right. So really look to see where that information is coming from, because it's not exactly. I saw this tweet. What would you say in the final stages are mistakes that you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, how did this happen this time? How did they not see this?
Common mistakes. Well, the most common mistake probably in the entire application process is, and I've asked many admissions directors this, is writing what you think they want to hear, as opposed to what you really believe, which kind of goes back to the Kritika's question about consistency. If you're saying what you really believe, think, happened, did, then consistency isn't a problem. If you're writing what you think somebody wants to hear, well, it could change because your understanding of that could change, and then suddenly consistency will become a problem. And authenticity kind of looks, like, is this? Well, they said this, doesn't jive. So I think that could be an issue. Another one might be using AI. Overusing AI, I would say, because then again, you come across as very plastic as opposed to genuine, synthetic. That would be the overuse of AI. Those would be some common mistakes that come to mind. But I think, if you look at your application on the 3 levels that I discussed initially, you'll be avoiding most mistakes. Obviously, you have to allow time for it. And I realize that my day-by-day schedule, while the ideal, may not work for everybody, but to the extent that you have a little bit of distance, temporal distance between each of those phases, I think your check will be more thorough and effective.
Absolutely.
And you're reiterating the fact that it is an iterative process.
Yes.
It requires multiple glances as opposed to something like, get it done and then throw it out, kind of a one-time thing.
But it's like any problem you want to solve. Having a sleep on it gives you perspective.
Right.
Your brain works that way.
Right. And I think that, part of my idea, and I realize it's time consuming, but if you focus on one thing, how effective is multitasking? It's not. We all know it. We all do it. We all know it's not effective. That's how we know it's not effective, because we made mistakes that way. But if you focus on the application at levels that I'm talking about, I call it the editing funnel, then it's, you're going to be able to focus on the different elements and catch mistakes.
Gentlemen, I'd just like to point out that a woman here admitted that multitasking does not work.
I'll be good at it.
it feels good because you feel like you're getting little things done. But at the end of the day, the amount of time you lose when your brain is switching tasks is proven to.
And you're not even counting the time it takes you to correct the mistakes you made.
Yeah. However, I think taking regular breaks is really important. And knowing how your brain works is knowing yourself is just good in any case.
Yeah, I'm going to go around the room and ask all of you about how long do you think people should spend on essays, or typically, like you can say either in hours or weeks or time that you typically see in your clients.
Do you want me to start, or Eric?
You're a guest, Linda. If you'd like to go first, please.
All right. So obviously it varies enormously by client. As you know, native English speaker, where English is not a first language, and also just how many hours. I once years ago heard a client say they spent about 40 hours, I think, on the first application, but that was when also there were more essays and they were longer. I'm going to guess that, you know, assuming that the client is working full time, I would say the first application probably takes 3 or 4 weeks, and then it goes down. Later applications take less time, like 1 to 2, maybe the second one will be 3, you know, but it goes down after that.
Eric?
Yeah, you know, similar. Obviously, if they're not a native English speaker, I would say usually there's at least 3, 4, maybe more drafts or iterations of the essay. I'm a big fan of Google Docs. Even if you're doing it alone, you can access the thing anytime. So if you get stuck on the train or whatever, you have 45 minutes to kill. That sounds awful, by the way. You can make the most of it. You can also share with some trusted people. And of course, if you're working with a professional admissions consultant, I think it's just the easiest way. It tracks all your changes. You can add suggestions, comments, and like you can go back in time and see original versions. I really believe in staying organized. Google Drive is fantastic. You make folders for each school. The reality is I know some people will do a sort of copy paste job from one school to another for a baseline for an essay. But if the question is similar, if we're talking about a goals essay versus an impact essay and so forth, you know, and then you make the changes that are necessary to make it correspond to that school. But you got to not make that mistake of forgetting to change the name of the school. That's the
Change the name first.
Yeah, 100%.
Find and replace. Change the name first.
Yeah. Yeah, have someone else go through that. But anyway, long story short, could take a couple of weeks, you know, with all the iterations that you're going to have, feedback, you know. Yeah.
I would agree. It definitely takes about 20 to 30 hours for a lot of people because it's so new and there's so much of self-introspection involved in it. And also, this is probably the first time that, especially for people from this part of the world where the focus is not on the test alone. So they really have to focus on the rest of the components. It takes them a long time to adapt to that mindset. And those who do it earlier are able to get it done faster as well. Yeah, so I think we're coming to the kind of the close, but this is kind of the last question that I had for you, Linda. What should applicants be doing after submitting the application?
Oh, have a party? No. So, well, let's assume that you're asking about the first application. Then you probably start on the second one. Take a day off, and start on the second one. If it is the last application, then celebrate. You've done your best. Maybe you already have an interview invitation from the first one, which would be really nice. If you have some weaknesses in your application, work to mitigate them. Don't, you know, whether it's maybe, I don't know, maybe you felt that your leadership wasn't strong enough. Try and get some leadership experience. Maybe you felt you didn't have adequate community service in your profile. Then you could either continue what you've started already, which is what I hope you would have done upon realizing you didn't have enough, or start something now, because what you want to do, or maybe your GPA is a little on the low side, so take some graded courses, or hopefully the test score is a little bit harder to handle. But if you have to, if your test score is a little low, then retake the test, right, Bara? do what you can do to strengthen your qualifications at that point in time. Because if you are invited to interview or waitlisted or even rejected, you want to be in a better position. You want to say, hey, look what I've done. I'm even better than I was when you decided to interview me or waitlisted me or rejected me last time.
Come bearing good news, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that you're saying, I would say, fall into the category of, taking steps to bring your goals closer to your ultimate goal, whether that's getting to the school, but also the career you want to have. If you're doing a pivot, a transformation in your career, doing things that will bring you closer to that goal, because the goal is not getting to the school. That's a stepping stone.
It's a means to an end. It's a means to an end.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, going right off of you, I think you're making a really good point. If, let's say, you are trying a career pivot, maybe you can assume a role at work or take on responsibilities that are more in the direction in which you want to go, in which case you'll have experience that's going to be relevant to a future employer and will make your goal more real and feasible to the schools you're applying to. So again, if you're interviewed or waitlisted, you can say, hey, look what I'm doing.
Yep. Asking for additional responsibilities, working on a project, anything that it was related to AI or tech, right? Coming with some experience already in the AI stuff is desirable for companies, is therefore desirable for schools. If you don't have a mentor in your life, take on a mentor. It's something I often suggest to my applicants, especially if they're on the younger side. But mentorship goes through the ranks, and there's great benefits to working with a mentor on both sides, or a mentee, I should say. So there's loads of things you can do.
All right.
Self-care also should be in there.
Absolutely.
What was that?
Self-care, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, give yourself really, like you joked around, Linda, and said have a party. But the truth is like, you've really done something amazing and you dug deep, you put yourself out there. Give yourself a little bit of space to do something good for yourself before you do deep dives on other things. Self-care and celebration. Absolutely.
Right. And that, I was joking about having a party, but it might be going for a hike. That's what I like to do. Or just a walk in the park. It might be going out to dinner with friends, or going to a movie or a play or concert, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like that it doesn't stop after you hit submit. There are a lot more pieces coming your way. And especially if you want to get interviewed, it's going to be like, too many things there. So that's all the time we had for today. Thank you so much, Linda, for your wonderful insights. As always.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Good
and for all our guests in the audience as well. If you liked today's episode, give us a little thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all things, all the latest trends in the world of business and education. Finally, don't forget to check us out next week, same time and place, on something exciting on video essays. And for full access to past episodes, please head to mbawaves.com. Bye for now and happy writing.
Thank you.